Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our webinar. We're really excited to be here today to talk about next level tick bite avoidance tips. And the tips we're going to talk about are the ones that are effective against Lone Star ticks. So you might be asking, why do we need to have a webinar about tick bite avoidance when the internet is full of tick bite avoidance strategies? And the reason is because most tick bite prevention strategies were designed for black-legged ticks. But Lone Star ticks are different in some very important ways. So the reason there's so much research on black-legged ticks is because these are the ticks that transmit the pathogen that causes Lyme disease, which is a really bad disease. Lone Star ticks, at least according to the CDC, do not transmit the pathogen that causes Lyme disease. So you might be saying, if they don't cause Lyme disease, why should I care about Lone Star tick bites? And the reason is because they carry a lot of other diseases, including ehrlichiosis, tularemia, Heartland virus, Bourbon virus, starry eye, which is very much like Lyme disease, but they don't know what causes it. If you were bitten by a Lone Star tick and you think you had Lyme disease, it was probably this condition. Rickettsia parkeri, and of course, they also cause alpha-gal syndrome. And alpha-gal syndrome is by far the most common of these conditions. There are far more numbers of alpha-gal cases than there are of all these other diseases put together. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it. What is alpha-gal syndrome? It's a severe, often life-threatening allergy to a sugar, but this is not the kind of sugar that you put in your coffee. It's a very special sugar called galactose alpha-1,3 galactose. That's a bit of a mouthful, but luckily it's got a nickname, alpha-gal. So what is alpha-gal found in? It's found in most mammals, including mammals that we eat, cats and dogs, and all other non-primate mammals. And it's also found in products made from mammals and products made with ingredients from mammals, including foods, drugs and medical devices, personal care products, and household products. And if you develop alpha-gal syndrome after being bitten by a Lone Star tick, you may be allergic to some or all of these. So in 2023, the CDC declared that alpha-gal syndrome is a growing threat to public health. And as you can see on the right, diagnosed cases have grown exponentially from when alpha-gal was first described in 2009 until now. And to some extent, this is because previously alpha-gal syndrome was relatively unknown and more people are getting diagnosed. But it's also because Lone Star tick populations are exploding. And Lone Star ticks are spreading farther north and farther west than they have ever been before. And this is causing a huge increase in alpha-gal syndrome cases, to the point where alpha-gal syndrome is now the 10th most common food allergy. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, but I already have alpha-gal syndrome. What have I got to lose? You do have something to lose, because if you have alpha-gal syndrome and you get new tick bites, then your reactions can get worse. And the threshold at which you react to alpha-gal may be lowered, which means you may start reacting to new foods. You may start reacting to trace exposures. And on the other hand, if you can avoid ticks and you get no new tick bites, then you're likely to become less reactive. And you may even go into remission. And if you go into remission, then you don't have alpha-gal syndrome anymore. But we don't say you're cured because a new tick bite can bring it back. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about Lone Star ticks, because this is a case where you need to know your enemy. Lone Star ticks are not your grandmother's tick. They are more like a cross between a lentil and a velociraptor. They are tough. They are aggressive, and they are fast. So other ticks that tend to bite humans usually will hang out on a piece of vegetation or a piece of grass, waiting for you to walk by and brush against the vegetation, and that's how they get onto you. Not Lone Star ticks. Lone Star ticks will hunt you. They can detect you from many yards away, and then they can cover. They're so fast that they can cover 100 feet in 5 minutes. They crawl up you and they find a place to bite you. And Lone Star tick larvae, they're tiny little baby ticks, are also different from the larvae of other ticks. These really aren't around that much right now. They're more around in late summer and fall, but I'm still going to talk about them because they're important. So the larvae of other ticks are less likely to bite human beings. American dog ticks don't bite humans at all normally. Black lung tick larvae will bite humans sometimes, but usually you just get a handful of bites. But Lone Star ticks hang out in tick bombs. And these are clusters of hundreds to thousands of larval ticks. And if you brush up against vegetation that has a tick bomb on it, this is what happens to you. This person was hit by 3 larval tick bombs. And this can result in hundreds to thousands of bites. The good thing is that larvae don't transmit pathogens that cause disease, but the bad thing is that multiple bites like this are more likely to cause alpha-gal syndrome. And we think that a lot of cases of alpha-gal syndrome are caused by these larval Lone Star ticks. All right, this is what larval tick bites look like. They're often on your ankle or calf or your groin, but they can be other places too. And when people get bites like this, they say, oh, the chiggers got me. No, this is not chiggers. And then they'll say, oh, well, I didn't see the tick, so it must be chiggers. Nope. When you get bitten like this, you usually do not see the larval ticks. And this can be because they feed quickly and drop off, or they're just very delicate and they are, and you tend to brush them off. But if you do see them, they look like this. This is my own boot after I was hit by a larval tick bomb. They're extremely tiny. They look kind of like brown sugar or red dust. So where are Lone Star ticks? Here's a map of where established populations are found. And as you can see from the dark orange area, the distribution is expanding. And throughout this area, though, Lone Star tick populations are kind of patchy. So I like this map of alpha-gal cases because it shows you where Lone Star ticks are most abundant. Keep in mind that where Lone Star ticks populations are established, they tend to outcompete black-leg ticks. So if you have Lone Star ticks moving into your area, it won't usually take very long before they're outcompeting the black-leg ticks. And they tend to account for the vast majority of tick bites in areas where they're found. For example, in Virginia, 95% of all tick encounters are Lone Star ticks, and in Delaware, it's 97%. All right, another difference with Lone Star ticks is the hosts. Deer are the keystone species. Unlike other tick species, all 3 stages of Lone Star tick feed on deer, the larvae, the nymphs, and the adults. And they also feed on other species, especially when they're larvae and nymphs, like medium-sized mammals, birds like turkeys, but they do not feed on small mammals like mice. And therefore, certain tick strategies that have been developed for black-leg ticks, like tick tubes, are not effective against Lone Star ticks. And the reason we have these exploding Lone Star tick populations is because deer populations are exploding. As go deer, so go Lone Star ticks. They go hand in hand. So keep that in mind throughout this presentation. Lone Star ticks are also habitat generalists. That means they're not too picky about where they live compared to other ticks. Black-leg ticks like to live in forests, and you can find Lone Star ticks there. American tog ticks like to live in open fields, and you can find Lone Star ticks there. And in fact, anywhere where you find vegetation in deer, you will find Lone Star ticks, including mowed lawns. And this doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep your lawn mowed, because it will help reduce the Lone Star tick populations. But unlike other ticks, they will crawl right out into your lawn anyway. And here's something that tick expert Patrick Roden Reynolds shared of just all the different places he found Lone Star ticks. And, long story short, everywhere. That said, there are particular habitats that Lone Star ticks really love. They like wooded and brushy areas with high grass and litter. They like forest edges. This is where I feel like I always encounter them. In the mid-Atlantic, pine and scrub habitat, and in vegetation along the coast. So if you're going to be in this kind of habitat, be extra careful. All right, now we're going to get to the tick bite avoidance strategies. So the first set of these strategies you need to think about before you leave home. And of these, permethrin is the permethrin-treated clothing, shoes, and gear is the single best way to avoid Lone Star ticks. If you leave this webinar and don't implement a single tick strategy other than this, you're still going to be so much better off. If you have to pick one thing to do, use the permethrin-treated clothing and shoes. It's important to note that permethrin actually kills ticks, unlike repellents. Repellents just repel ticks, but they don't kill them. And with permethrin, you have 3 options. The first option is to buy some permethrin spray like this. You can get it from Amazon or a lot of other places, and apply it yourself. I like to use the spray to treat my shoes. And if you just treat your shoes with permethrin and you do nothing else, you'll get 74% fewer tick bites. So it's an important step. I also like the spray to treat my hats and my gear. If you apply permethrin yourself, read the labels of the products, follow the instructions, and please don't put permethrin on your skin. You can't do that, or on your underpants or other undergarments. And if you own a cat, talk to your vet, because when permethrin is wet, it's dangerous for cats. So you want to make sure that you understand how to use it safely. All right, the next 2 options for permethrin are both involve a commercial treatment that was developed by a company called Insect Shield. They developed a process by which they can bind permethrin to your clothes, which is really great because then it lasts longer through 70 wash cycles, compared to if you treat your own clothing, it only lasts for 6 wash cycles. And there's no data to suggest that this treatment actually works better, but in my experience, it does too. It's not just that it lasts longer, it works better. Okay, so the first option that involves this commercial treatment is buying commercially treated clothing directly from Insect Shield or from one of their brand partners. And they've got a lot of brand partners. You can find them all on their website. I like to buy the Insect Shield socks directly from them. Option number 3, you can have your own clothes treated by Insect Shield. It costs $9 per piece, or you can buy these bags for about $120. And I like to do this. I like my own clothes. So I get these bags and I just stuff the heck out of them, send my clothes off, and then I have treated clothing that's gonna last for months. Here's a QR code. I'm going to share these slides in my support group on the Alpha Gut Information website, and I'll try to email to you if I can figure out how to do that. So you'll be able to access these QR codes later. But I love this company, Insect Shield, but to be clear, I don't have any kind of financial relationship with them or any other company I might mention in this presentation. All right, dress for success. Wear long socks, long pants, long sleeve shirts, light colored clothes so you can see the ticks, and then tuck your pants into your socks and your shirt into your pants. Think about getting some of these tick gaiters. They're treated with permethrin, and people in the alpha-gal community love these, especially these Limese gaiters, because they have these little nooks and crannies that the ticks can crawl into, and they're exposed to permethrin there, and that kills them. My favorite tip of all that has saved me from so many ticks is to wear tall boots and wrap the top of them with double-sided carpet tape. And what happens is the Lone Star ticks detect you and they come running at you. They crawl up the boot and they get stuck in this tape. I've caught dozens and dozens of ticks in my tape, and I've never had one make it past the tape. I actually use 2 kinds of tape, both of which you can get on Amazon. I put Trazon, which is a little bit less sticky on the boot because it's easier to pull off. And eventually you do have to pull off this tape. And then on top of it, I put YYX Life because it's super sticky and I really trust it to trap the ticks. So, this tape will you'll get leaves and sticks and stuff stuck in it. And what I do is I just put down another layer right on top of the old layer. But eventually it gets really thick and you have to cut it off. And that's when it helps to have the Trazon as the underlayer. Here are 3 species of tick that were caught in my own tape on my own boots. So, okay, boots are very hot. You might not want to wear them. Then you can consider wrapping your pants or your socks with double-sided carpet tape. And I also discovered recently that there's this new tick tape, Billy Bob tick tape. And I bought some and I tried it. And I like the fact that you can tear it, whereas the double-sided carpet tape you have to cut. I did find it's a little hard to get the backing off, but maybe there's a trick to that I don't know. But this is an alternative to the boot strategy. All right, repellents. Do you want to use a repellent? Tick experts are a little bit mixed on this for Lone Star ticks. Some say Lone Star ticks drink DEET for breakfast. Others say it can be helpful, but they all agree that you should not rely exclusively on repellents like DEET or picaridin or some home remedy that your neighbor down the street told you about. They are not always effective against Lone Star ticks. And they do not kill ticks. Remember, only permethrin does that. And they're often short-acting. If you do go the repellent route, here are some repellents that supposedly work to some extent. I really like this EPA repellent tool. There's the QR code for it. It will help you figure out what the right repellent for you is. All right, the next set of tick bite avoidance strategies are ones that you employ while out and about in tick habitat. First of all, carry a tick kit, especially a lint roller. I'm going to talk about why in a bit. Fine tip tweezers in case you're bitten by a tick so that you can remove it properly using the proper technique. Alcohol wipes that you can disinfect the tick bite with and also clean your tweezers with. And finally, tape index card and Ziploc bag. And this is for securing the tick because you want to save the tick, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. All right, when you're walking around, try to stay in the center of the trail. It's not that there won't be any Lone Star ticks there, but there'll be fewer because, like all ticks, Lone Star ticks are susceptible to desiccation or drying out, and they prefer to be in the leaf litter. Keep your dog on a leash and keep your dog on the trail. Remember, if you stay still, those Lone Star ticks will detect you and come find you. So keep moving. You do not want to stay in one place for too long. All right. Don't sit in tick-infested areas or on stone walls. I think this is kind of obvious, but it's easy to forget. If you must sit in tick-infested areas, which I don't advise, sit on a permethrin-treated blanket, picnic blanket. You can get them from Insect Shield. Check for ticks frequently. But no matter how hard you look, you're going to miss some of the small ones, which is why you have this lint roller with you. Roll yourself, roll your clothing from time to time. You will be amazed what you pick up. You absolutely will pick up small ticks this way that you don't notice with your bare eye. And also, very important, you have that lint roller with you in case you're hit by a larval tick bomb. It is really hard to get a larva, all those hundreds to thousands of ticks off you. They kind of cling to you and they disperse, and you're just not going to get them off without a lint roller. But with a lint roller, you can get them off. I've been hit by 2 larval tick bombs, and I rolled both of them up with my lint roller and didn't get a single bite. And then before you enter your car or house, roll that lint roller over every square inch of your clothing. I also make anybody who's going to be in the car with me also roll themselves. And this is usually enough to keep you from bringing ticks into the car or house. But the exception is if you're hit by a larval tick bomb and you didn't notice it and they've dispersed all over your clothing, then you might want to take your clothing off. And so you might want to keep a garbage bag and a change of clothes in the car. Otherwise, you are going to find yourself driving home in your underwear, which is really embarrassing. It's possible that your 2 presenters today have some experience with this, but we're not going to talk about it. All right, another set of strategies have to do with when you get home. First of all, as soon as you get home, check your clothes and gear for ticks before you even get in the house. Then as soon as you're in the house, take your clothes off and stick them in the dryer on high for at least 20 minutes. Water does not kill ticks. The heat in the dryer dries the ticks out and kills them. Get a shower to wash off any ticks you missed. And while you're in the shower or before or after, do a body check. And here are some of the areas that you need to remember to check. It really helps to keep a handheld mirror in the shower to check for spots you can't otherwise see. All right, pets. We're going to talk a little bit about controlling ticks on pets, because pets are the #1 source of ticks in homes. And also your pets can also get tick-borne disease. Keep cats indoors. It's healthier for them. Cats are healthier and they live longer when they're indoors. And it's important to understand that Lone Star ticks carry this nasty protozoal disease, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce. If you don't keep your cat indoors, they're going to bring ticks in, and the ticks will end up biting you. The American Bird Conservancy has a great resource for how to turn outdoor cats into indoor cats without traumatizing them. So keep dogs in safe spaces. Well, there's never any truly safe space when it comes to Lone Star ticks, but you can create an area like this. You can see the dog is kept away from the tall vegetation. And then you got to fence it off. You can use a regular fence or an invisible fence. Do not sleep with your dog. I can't tell you how often in my support group, people tell me they slept with their dog and they got a Lone Star tick. I think it's the most common way that people get bitten by ticks indoors. And there are a lot of topical and oral products and collars. Some repel ticks. Some kill ticks. On the right, you see some products that were recommended by a vet in a presentation that I watched, but I think these products are always changing and the recommendations are changing, so please talk to your vet. And you can also learn more at Tick Encounter, which is just in general a great resource for all things tick related. Check your pets for ticks every day, especially if they've been outdoors. Run your fingers through their fur, feel for any small bumps. And this picture on the right shows you some of the places where you need to look. All right, sometimes you do everything right and you still get a tick bite. What do you do then? Remove the ticks as soon as possible using proper technique, because you don't want to agitate the tick by putting something like nail polish or Vaseline or something on them that causes them to regurgitate all those nasty pathogens and alpha-gal into your skin. And you don't want to squeeze them and squeeze that stuff into you. There's a really cool thing called the CDC Tick Bot that can guide you through the process of safe tick removal. And here's the QR code. Call your healthcare provider. They might have thoughts on what you need to do. And we can't really give you all that advice here. All right, save the tick. Tape the tick to an index card with clear tape. Add the date and the location. Because if you get sick, this is going to be important information. Then put the index card into a bag and put the bag in the freezer. Now you may be saying to yourself, why would I want ticks in my freezer? Admittedly, an understandable question. And the reason is because, particularly if you get sick, you're going to want to get that tick ID'd and tested for pathogens. Why get ticks ID'd and tested for pathogens? Because if you're sick, different ticks carry different pathogens. And so you're going to want to know what species of tick bit you. And the reason to get the testing is, again, it can be helpful information if you're sick, because a lot of these tick-borne diseases present with really similar symptoms and they're hard to diagnose. Photograph the tick. You can send your photos to Tick Spotters, which is a really cool service. They ID your tick for free. And here's the QR code. Please remember to photograph the top of the tick. They don't want to photograph at the bottom of the tick, and they're not going to ID your tick if you make that mistake. Test the tick. You can test the tick for disease-causing pathogens, and there are many tick testing services. Do your homework, because they test for different pathogens. They have different prices, and some states even have free services. For example, Nebraska and Pennsylvania. Actually, the Nebraska folks right now are taking ticks from all over the country and testing them for free. Keep in mind that this is not a well-regulated practice, and that quality control really varies. Personally, I would only trust the state-run labs and this organization, Tick Report, which kind of does state-of-the-art tick testing. And here's a QR code. And I'm putting together a spreadsheet of all the different tick testing labs. If you want to help me with that, reach out, because yeah, I'm kind of dragging my feet on it. So tick testing, some things to think about. Take note that the CDC does not recommend tick testing. And that's because, first of all, they don't want you to wait to get the test results before you see a doctor. Don't do that. If you have symptoms of tick-borne disease, go to the doctor. Time is of the essence when it comes to treating tick-borne disease. Also, a positive result does not mean that you will necessarily get sick. The tick might have a pathogen that they did not transfer to you. And a negative result does not mean that you won't get sick, because you might have been bitten by another tick. And as I've discussed, there's some quality control issues. And even in a good lab, they might miss a pathogen. And finally, note that there's no tick test for alpha-gal. I've never heard of a Lone Star tick that was found not to contain alpha-gal. Just assume that the tick contained alpha-gal. All right, I always get this question: how long does the tick need to be attached? For alpha-gal syndrome, if it's attached long enough to cause an itchy local reaction, it's been attached long enough. And unfortunately, this can be a very short amount of time. For other tick-borne diseases associated with Lone Star ticks, remember, we're not talking about Lyme disease here. We just don't have the data. So don't assume that just because a tick has not been attached for 24 hours means that you're safe. You're not. All right. So if you're bitten by tick, it's very important to watch for signs of tick-borne disease. And for infectious disease, we're talking about days to weeks after a bite. Watch for flu-like symptoms. Here's a list of them. Note that you won't necessarily get a rash. Again, we're not talking about Lyme disease. Even with Lyme disease, you don't necessarily get a rash, but some of the diseases carried for which Lone Star ticks carry a pathogen, they don't cause a rash ever. Do take note if you have a fever. Like if you have a fever, there is a little bit of overlap between some of these symptoms and alpha-gal. But like if you have a fever, that's not alpha-gal. I also want to highlight this because I see this a lot in the alpha-gal support groups. If you get a tick bite like this that has an ulcer, please go see your doctor. This could be tularemia. All right. You also need to watch for signs of alpha-gal syndrome. And unlike with the infectious diseases, this is a two-step process. First of all, you check soon after the bite. Did you develop an itchy reaction, local reaction to the tick bite that lasted maybe days or weeks? Or did you get bites like this from larval ticks? If either of this is true, you are more likely to develop alpha-gal syndrome. You won't necessarily develop it, but you're more at risk of developing it. All right. Step 2. Step 2 takes place weeks to a year after the bite because the allergic response doesn't happen immediately. It takes weeks to months to up a year or maybe even more to develop. So if you're bitten by a Lone Star tick, you're not going to eat a hamburger the next day and have an allergic reaction. It usually takes about 6 weeks. Can happen a bit faster if you have a history of tick bites, but that's the usual amount of time. So what do you look for? Well, you get an alpha-gal exposure like eating a hamburger, and then 2 to 10 hours later, you develop allergic symptoms. You can develop any allergic symptoms, but with alpha-gal, hives and GI upset, like in particular abdominal pain, are very common. But keep in mind that unlike other allergies, with alpha-gal, you don't always react every time. So if you're somebody who doesn't react every time, you might eat a hamburger every day for a month and not react, and then eat a hamburger and have a life-threatening reaction. And also keep in mind that some people only react when they exercise or drink alcohol. And if you're one of these folks, then you might eat a hamburger and not react one day, and then eat a hamburger and drink a beer, or go for a run afterwards and react. And you could have a very severe reaction. Just because you don't react every time, or you only react when you exercise or drink alcohol, does not necessarily mean that you'll have a mild reaction. All right. Another sign. If you are reacting late at night, if you're having allergic reactions late at night, you really better rule out alpha-gal syndrome, because no other food allergy does this. With other food allergies, the reactions happen immediately. If you have late night reactions, go see a doctor. And finally, if you develop, sometimes alpha-gal presents with only GI symptoms or only joint symptoms. So if you develop chronic GI symptoms weeks after having been bitten by a Lone Star tick, or if you develop, like in particular, IBS-like symptoms, or if you develop joint symptoms, that might be a good time to get tested. All right, so now Dee is going to talk about your yard. And while she's talking, I want you to keep a couple things in mind. First of all, that there's no research, none at all, on Lone Star tick control for yards. And there is some for black-leg ticks, but remember, Lone Star ticks are tougher. And also keep in mind that where there are deer, there are Lone Star ticks. So in the absence of any research and any data on what works, we have to rely on smart people and their individual experience. And luckily we have a smart person in the form of Dee Nash. She's a garden coach, an award-winning author and garden blogger, and her passion is to help people garden in a very difficult climate, and that is Oklahoma, made more difficult now by Lone Star ticks. And she has been coming up with her own strategies and has a lot to offer. So we're lucky to have her here today. And with that, Dee, I will turn things over to you.
Okay, so sorry to have so many words on one slide, but we're just going to bust through this best as possible. These are anecdotal things I've done in my own landscape, which have really helped. One of the things I figured out about 6 months into having alpha-gal syndrome was that I was using shredded leaves as mulch and as a soil amendment, which meant I put it into the soil when I planted a plant. So I used it both things like a compost. And you don't want to do that because that's where Lone Star ticks like to lay their eggs. So I was basically creating Tickville in my garden. And instead, you should use something like arborist chips, which are whole tree wood chips. These knit together as a mulch, and they don't tend to like to lay their eggs in this mulch as much, even as it decays. But I apply mulch both in the spring and I apply it in the fall right before winter time. So you can also use stones like decomposed granite. They don't like to be hot. And so even though they seem to be tougher than black-legged ticks, we know that you can eventually desiccate the little creeps. Mow your lawn as short as possible. Granted, it's not a perfect condition because they have found Lone Star ticks in your lawn, but it's better than having high grass. High grass is just asking for trouble. And then keep your flower beds and your borders weeded. I weed a little bit every day. And then eliminate shady garden beds if possible. I did that in my garden. I reduced my garden by about a third. I still live in a treed area of Oklahoma. You probably didn't know there was a treed area, but by living in this treed area of Oklahoma, I live in the middle of trees. Okay, so I do have a shady front lawn and shady front beds, but I try to only go through those twice a year. So I go through, weed them, and I'm wearing all of my tick clothing, and then I go back through and mulch them, and that's it. And I've quit planting extra things in them. All right, so the one tip I think really helped me a lot is that I don't plant things deer like to eat. Instead, I use plants that they don't prefer. And people ask you, well, what do they not prefer? Because deer will eat anything if they're really hungry. But think scented plants or plants with silvery leaves or plants that have a spiky feel to their mouths. They don't like any of those. They do love hostas and hydrangeas and roses because they eat the tops of the roses. And then this one's going to be kind of controversial. And I had a lot of grief. I had a grieving process, but I used tick granules with Permethrin in them as the active ingredient. And so one thing Sharon wanted me to mention is that concentrations of this ingredient, which is the most effective ingredient against Lone Stars, we believe, concentrations can be anywhere from 0.5% to 10%. So you have to do your homework or hire a professional. I have mast cell activation syndrome that developed after my alpha-gal syndrome. And so I have trouble being around chemicals. So I actually hired a professional and he's here right now. That's why I had to jump up and tell him I was in the middle of this. So I hired the professional. We went through my garden because I was an organic gardener. I did all organic practices and I still care deeply about pollinators and birds. So we are very, very careful about where we place the granules. We do it in the most prevalent areas where I have seen ticks. Also, one of the best things I did is I have stone pathways through the back of my garden. I have gravel, and then I have concrete pathways and brick pathways all around my house. And they connect all of my gardens except for my cut flower garden. And actually, I'm thinking about putting down a brick pathway to it too, so I don't have to walk across the grass. I always walk on pathways over my entire yard. I try not to ever walk in the grass unless I'm fully clothed in permethrin bonded clothing. And I wanted to add to that one more thing to Sharon's piece, because I'm a gardener and I brought props. I'm in the garden all the time, and so I'm down in the plants, which is how I got bit. I got bit by 5 probably nymph-sized ticks. I probably was in a tick bomb and didn't know it. And so I wear these sleeves, which come from Farmers Defense, and they're made of a very lightweight UV cloth, and I actually treat them with permethrin. I spray them. And then I also wear these gloves, which are made of bamboo. And what's important about these gloves is not what they're made of, other than the fact that that makes them cooler. I live in a very hot climate. They fit very tight at the wrist. And last year, I was diagnosed in 2023, but last year I got a bite right next to my wristband. And so I now wear sleeves or long sleeves, and then I wear gloves over those sleeves, and everything is tucked into everything else. And I also wear a hat on my head because those ticks move fast. I watched one crawl up my leg, and I had to admire her. She was a girl, and I had to admire her because she was like a little mountain climber climbing up my leg. And so I really take it seriously, and I'm very careful when I go outside. So I hope all of those tips help you. It is a grieving process when you have to change how you garden or how you hike or how you hunt, but you've got to, I think you have to do it.
Sorry, I had a little trouble unmuting there. Thank you so much, Dee. I'm going to leave you if I can. Oh yeah, here are some additional resources. The CDC tick pages are really great. Tick Encounter is just an unbelievable resource for all kinds of tick information. The Vineyard Haven Library ticks videos are some of my favorites. These folks are really on the ball. They've got Lone Star ticks moving in, and they really are at the forefront of figuring out strategies. And then most of these resources are also on the Alpha-Gal information tick pages, and that's where I'm also, if I successfully recorded this, we'll leave a recording and a set of the slides. Now, if you have any questions, I'm sorry, I'm not very adept at this process, but let's see. I don't know if anybody's put any questions in the Q&A. Let's see. I do not see any questions. All right, Deirdre's got her hand up, and somebody else. Let's see. Hey, Deirdre. Do you want to unmute?
Yes, I'm trying. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate everything. Having had this for 16 years now. This is my 16th year with Alpha-Gal, and I appreciate all of these webinars and outreach that you continue to do.
Thank you so much. Did you have a question?
I do have a question about the.
Yeah.
I do have a question about the permethrin. Is there a certain concentration that you recommend?
No, there isn't. I really don't know much about it, to tell you the truth. I mean, I know some people like treat their own clothing in a bucket, blah, blah, blah. Like, I would just say, be careful to follow the instructions because, you know, you
Okay.
don't want to poison yourself or anything. Like, permethrin's a very, very benign chemical for humans because we have an enzyme that metabolizes it, but still follow the instructions.
All right, I certainly will.
All right, we've got another question here from Diana. I think you have to unmute, Diana.
How's that?
Yep, now we can hear you.
I killed a tick on my neck as you were speaking, a Lone Star tick.
Oh no.
I'd only been outside maybe 20 minutes this morning. I just thought I'd tell you that happy note.
Yeah, were you wearing permethrin treated clothing?
No, I was not. I was not.
You
Yeah.
better next time. I don't even literally don't step outdoors without at the bare minimum permethrin treated socks.
Yeah.
I think I may have to follow that advice.
Yeah.
I wear shoes that are treated with permethrin, and I wear my permethrin socks that are bonded, or I wear boots with permethrin socks and I tuck my jeans in. And that's just to go get the mail. I've been bit too many times.
All right, let's see.
We do have some questions now, Sharon, in
Oh,
the,
we do. Okay. And then I'm gonna let Stacy go since she's here. Stacy, do you want to unmute?
Hi, I have Lyme disease and AGS. I was curious, what is in the granules that you're putting on the ground? I'm a master gardener and composter also, so.
well, it depends on which ones you get. The ones you want have to have it's hard to say, bifenthrin, bifenthrin. And so it's a form of permethrin, because
Okay.
almost all permethrin, which actually, if I remember right, permethrin originally came from a chrysanthemum. It was something
Yes.
distilled from it, right? And
Yes.
so then they came up with ways to make it chemically, because that would be too expensive to reproduce. But the ones I use have that on the ground. So by putting them on the ground, you're not affecting pollinators as much, because the plants don't take it up with, unlike neonicotinoids, they don't take it up within the stem. It lays on the ground and it affects the ticks. And there is some thought that it might affect like ground crickets,
Uh-huh.
but and that's one of the things I had to mourn, because I just have to stay safe.
Yep. Yeah.
It can kill me, and I'm pretty reactive. So
I am highly, highly reactive. I don't even go in my yard right now. But and you do that in the spring and the fall, or how often?
I do it 4 times a year.
Okay.
It's a lot. And actually the Orkin, I hired Orkin to do it because he is very safe. And the same
Okay.
guy comes out every time. I'm not plugging him. I don't have any, particular relationship with him except as a customer, but he's really great. He's done a great job. And he cares
Well,
deeply about it's a pollinator group.
safe.
Yeah. I mean, I did everything for pollinators before this. It was a big deal.
Okay, let's
There's a lot of questions.
yeah, there's a lot of questions. Okay. And yeah, just also, I think that like this bifenthrin's got a weird name, but basically it's permethrin. They're all like pyrethroids, which are basically the original source of pyrethroids was chrysanthemums.
Chrysanthemums. Mhm.
So yeah, but the synthetic ones have different names. Okay, I'm going to have the slides available on the Alpha-Gal information website, so I'm not going to try and like go back and figure out where the old slides were. But in terms of the larva, like they look like red dust. You're not going to be able to see any details on these little things. So I'm not quite sure that a picture is going to help you. If you see red dust and you try to brush it away and it starts to disperse, those are those larval ticks. Let's see, what other questions are you seeing there, Dee? How safe, oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Which part?
How
Oh,
safe are the chemicals around dogs and cats? Like dogs are fine around permethrin. Cats are okay around permethrin as long as it's dry. But when it's wet or when you're actually treating your clothing, you have to be careful, which is why I really do recommend talking to your vet, because I'm not a vet and like wouldn't want to get something wrong.
right. They asked us to talk about our Facebook support groups, and there's 2 that I like. I like the one that's the science-based information group, which you are the moderator of.
Yeah,
And
that's called Alpha-Gal Information Evidence-Based Support.
and then I like the meal planning hub a lot. And then there's a fume reaction group, which is airborne reactions, is in the title. Those are the 3 I probably spend the most time on, because I am airborne reactive too.
I also think for anybody who has alpha-gal syndrome and is really struggling with severe conditions, the Xolair group is really helpful, because so many people with bad cases of alpha-gal have been helped by Xolair. There's a lot of great groups. There's also regional groups, and I actually have a guide to the regional groups and some of the special interest groups on the Alpha-Gal information website.
Right. And that's where I educated myself first. was on the alpha-gal information site. I pored over it for weeks, quite frankly.
Sorry
Let's
about that,
see.
Dee.
No, weeks because
Too
it was
much
so hard to
information.
take in. It was just, I didn't know what I was into. So Patty Cleary said, thank you. Well, you're welcome. Let's
All
see.
right. So then we have, if permethrin is put on clothing, do we need to be concerned about absorbing it through the skin? Like, no, you really don't, because it's a very benign chemical. I mean, when I lived in Africa, I burnt permethrin mosquito coils. And so I was inhaling it like every night. It's, as I said, like we've got an enzyme that helps us metabolize it pretty easily. Oh,
And you also aren't putting it on your skin until it's either bonded into the clothing or it's dry. So that helps too.
yeah. And Mary Harkuff has a good question here about cedar side. So in general, like essential oils are not recommended for Lone Star ticks. I actually had a conversation with an expert about this, but he did say something about a cedar extract that they did find to be a little bit helpful against black leg ticks, but he said he had no idea if it would be helpful against Lone Star ticks. And this is the guy who knows more about yards and Lone Star ticks than anybody, because he is doing yard surveys and advising people about how to manage the ticks in their yards. So, I mean, these permethrin products, like the one that Dee was talking about, are the way to go. You can try cedar side though, but right now we don't have any data.
So some of the tick granules, I noticed yesterday when I did a little bit of research, some of the tick granules also have cedar side in them. So it's a, multi-level thing. So if you want to try that, great. I think Lone Star ticks are the toughest creatures on the planet, and they're really hard to get rid of. So I wouldn't use essential oils. I used to, and that's how I got bit.
All right, and then, we need more money going to research on Lone Star ticks across the board, their ecology, how to manage them, diseases that they cause. And, that's something that we've got to have to fight with for federal dollars for that. But all right, does alpha-gal make you more reactive to other types of tick bites? Yes, it does. I wish we
Yes, it
knew more
does.
about this, but we even know that some ticks in Europe that cause alpha-gal actually can sensitize you to something in the tick that is cross-reactive with something in bees and wasps. And we think that happens here too, because a lot of people with alpha-gal syndrome are more likely to not just react to bee and wasp stings, but also to develop an allergy to them. And yeah, a lot of it is just like, we don't know why, but for sure, this is very commonly reported in our community that we become reactive to other bug bites. And that's likely because these ticks are sensitizing us to other chemicals, not just alpha-gal. All right. Dee, here's one for you. How often does the bifenthrin need to be applied?
So you want to apply it whenever there are different stages of life stages for the ticks. And that's why I hired a professional, because we sat down, went through the life stages. So I do it 4 times a year. And we're trying to hit the adults, the larval stage, and the nymph stage. So it's complicated.
All right, here's a question from Marilyn. Do chiggers cause alpha-gal syndrome? Or are what people think are chiggers actually Lone Star tick nymphs? They're not the nymphs. So here's what we know. We do know that people often confuse larval ticks and chiggers, and that in the South, a lot of the time people call larval ticks chiggers, which complicates the matter. There is no evidence that chiggers can cause alpha-gal syndrome, but they might very well be able to cause alpha-gal syndrome. We think that there might be all kinds of ectoparasites and even endoparasites that can cause alpha-gal syndrome, but we just don't have the data. And in fact, expert Scott Cummins, my husband was eaten alive by chiggers in Peru. And Dr. Cummins, while he was sad that this happened, he was very excited about the prospect of seeing whether his alpha-gal IgE went up, because my husband has a PhD and he studies arthropods, so he knows the difference between a chigger bite and a larval tick bite. In his case, his IgE did not go up, but that doesn't really mean much. So it's an open question. Could be, I think, is the short answer.
Earl has a question. What is the status of putting beef and pork indicators on the label of foods? That's one for you.
Yeah, you've got the right person to answer that because I'm very involved in this. And so the bill is working its way through the House. We have some very important supporters in key positions in the House. And we're hoping that it will go in front of the Health Subcommittee this year. But there's a lot going on in Congress right now. Things are a bit chaotic, so we're not 100% sure. So that's where we are. We have a lot of great support and we're really optimistic, but it's hard to pass a bill, particularly in this kind of a political climate. So we're not quite sure how long it's going to take.
Okay, so Doug Watford has a question that I think is a good question. In the hot and humid South, doing lawn chores such as cutting the grass is awfully hard if I wear long pants and shirts. I tend to wear shorts and checking for a tick on my legs often. Is this okay? Okay, the second half of it, no, that's not enough. But the first half of it is, I'll be really honest with you. When it is July and August in Oklahoma, it is hot and humid here too. And I wear shorts, but I wear bike shorts. I just look so pretty out there. I wear bike shorts, which are extremely tight. I mean, just so tight I can barely breathe. And then I have already sprayed those with Permethrin, or I've sent them into Insect Shield to be bonded. They will do those for me. Then I wear my boots. I still wear boots, and I still wear the long socks or the shorter socks. They're Permethrin bonded. And then on top of that, I do the tick tape around my boots. If I can't stand boots because it's just so hot, because it gets 110 here sometimes. First of all, I'm not going to be out there at 110. I try to mow in the mornings, and I try to do most of my chores in the morning because I've also become sun sensitive. But if I say I'm out there, it's middle of the day, I might wear shoes, but they'll be Permethrin sprayed. Again, I'll have on tick tape, and I'll put the tick tape around my socks because I want to prevent them running up my legs, because I can't tell you how fast they run.
I think that's great advice. It's important to remember ticks don't fly, they crawl up. So if you're not brushing against any vegetation and you're just out there on your lawn, if you can get some tape somewhere where the ticks are going to get caught if they crawl up, and you're wearing Permethrin treated clothing, like, I think that's the best you can do. And you know what? Dee and I would be the first to admit that we don't always take our own advice. Like, it's hard sometimes. There's trade-offs. You do what you can. Okay, another question for you, Dee. Where can we get the sleeves and bamboo gloves?
I order the bamboo gloves straight from Amazon, and it's bamboo touchscreen gloves, so you can still use your phone outside. And then these come from a company called Farmers Defense. They also have a hat, which I just bought, that is going to be Permethrin treated. And I think it's farmersdefense.com, and they have a lot of products, but you've got to get them treated.
Okay, let's see. Moving down. My wife is huge with sleeping with our dogs.
Yeah.
She kept claiming that our dogs are treated and shouldn't bring ticks in. I think it's a wrong assumption. Ooh, I don't want to get in the middle of this marital dispute. But Jose, I'm afraid to say I'm coming down on your side. Now, don't sick your wife on me. But yeah, I don't think that, it's great that your dogs are being treated, but if you're finding any ticks on them, then no, it's not okay for them to be sleeping with you. But then again, if you want to stay married, I'm sure Dee and I will agree that sometimes compromise is required. All right, thoughts on acupuncture? Yeah, my thought is that there is absolutely no credible evidence that it works. And I personally do not recommend it. If you're going to try acupuncture, I think it's very important that you don't go back to eating red meat. If you're just trying to reduce your reaction to inadvertent exposures, and you want to spend your money that way, whatever. But if you're going to go back to eating foods that are not safe for people with alpha-gal, that's a big mistake. And we actually had somebody in our community who died after they got acupuncture and thought that they were cured. So yeah, don't make that mistake.
So someone asked if all the clothing fibers except Permethrin, cotton, or synthetics better. I've used both cotton and synthetics, and they've done just fine, but you can always contact the people at Insect Shield, and they will tell you for sure.
All right. Do we miss anything here?
Someone asked about pavement. The thing is, this is Joanna. If there's any research about ticks can live on pavement. So here's the thing. They can definitely live on pavement long enough to crawl across it and up your leg. They're just less likely to because it desiccates them and it's hot. But is there any research? No, I don't think so yet. There's just not much research about ticks, this type of tick in the landscape, period.
All right. I think we've probably kept people long enough.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sign off. But as I said, I think I successfully recorded this, in which case I will share it on the Alpha Gal information website. Dee, I'm not quite sure. Did I mention your fabulous website? Dee has a fabulous website. I think I forgot. Red Dirt Rambling, where she offers like great expert gardening advice, in particular how to garden in Oklahoma. And she's got a great podcast. What's the name of that podcast, Dee?
The podcast I do with Carol Michael of Indianapolis, and it's the Garden Angelus because we spread the good news about gardening. But we talk about ticks on there too, because guess what? They're moving north. They're they're all over the place.
Well, I don't know if you're going to share this on your website, but maybe it will be there too.
Yeah,
And
I'll be
I'm
glad to
gonna
share.
try and email all of you, but we'll see if, since I'm technologically incompetent, whether I can actually succeed in doing that. But you'll have access to all those great QR codes and photographs of ticks and whatnot. And also, if somebody wanted to see pictures of larval ticks and nymphal ticks, like those are on the Alpha Gal information website under tick ID. And they're also, the CDC and Tick Encounter also has good photos of those things. All right, folks. Thank you so much for attending. I hope you learned something. If you only adopt one of these measures, let it be permethrin treated clothing. That's my final advice. And on that note, goodbye.